biography about you. Something Hartley.
Oh man, you know me. So guys, today I just wanted to look at the evidence for God and be able to kind of see what there is out there, and be able to see if there is a God, is there evidence out there? And really, the facts are always out there, but it's the interpretation of the facts that lead us to conclude either there is a God or it's something made by just chance. Okay, so we're going to look at some of the evidence. Let's start off with the heavens. I'm going to start really big first. What do the heavens tell us about the existence of God when we particularly look at the earth, the moon, and the sun? And we're going to look at some of the facts that we find out about the heavens that show that there is a God. So the Earth is exactly the right distance from the sun at about 160 million kilometers. Sunlight gives usable energy to organisms through photosynthesis. The Earth has liquid water that exists on Earth in all phases so that life on Earth is made possible. The moon and the sun appear the same size because although the moon is 1/400th the size of the sun, it is also 400 times closer than the sun, and that's why we get those amazing eclipses where we just see the whole sun eclipsed by the moon, and you see that corona around it because it's exactly the same size from the position from Earth. The moon gives tides to help remove pollutants and cycle nutrients. Just a fraction of the moon's tidal energy were conserved. That's okay. It alone could provide the Earth's electrical needs. So the moon gives actually quite a bit of tidal energy to the Earth. And if we could harness that, honestly, we could even take care of all the energy needs for the Earth. The moon also has phases, 12 per year. We get the seasons that are caused by Earth's tilt on a 23.5-degree axis towards or away from the sun, depending on the season that we have. And then people and other organisms have used the stars for navigation for thousands of years. So stars have been used, and we can see how the sun, the moon, and the Earth interact. And if we think of the Earth like a spaceship, I like to think of that like a spaceship. And we think of how incredibly the Earth has been made. If we were to make a spaceship to go through the universe, we see the Earth has lots of different properties similar to a spaceship that would ensure life to exist on the spaceship, as well as analogous to life existing on Earth. Okay. So that's the heavens. Now we're going to look at the Earth. What does the Earth show us that lends towards a possibility of there being a God? And what we see in the Earth is we see that the Earth has a protective magnetic field that shields us from solar and cosmic radiation that could essentially kill all life. If we didn't have that magnetic field, life would not be possible on Earth. The thermosphere is the hottest part of the layers of Earth's atmosphere, and it's the part of the atmosphere that absorbs the dangerous UV radiation from the sun to protect organisms on Earth. It's also where the Aurora lights are seen over the Earth. This layer makes radio waves bounce off the ground to make it transmit farther over the Earth. So the shortwave radio waves that we have, we can get it all around the world thanks to that thermosphere layer that enables us to have shortwave radio across the Earth. Then we got the mesosphere. That's 37 kilometers thick. And protects the Earth by burning up daily 40 tons of meteors in the atmosphere. So we're hit by about 40 tons of material. But because of the mesosphere, that's where it burns up in that. So that's when you see those shooting stars just kind of fly through the night. That is a meteor going through the mesosphere. So it contains a 5-kilometer thick sodium layer that causes a faint glow of the atmosphere. If you go up high, you can see that glow from this sodium layer that's in the mesosphere. The earth contains rocks and soils that support plant growth, purify the water, give a habitat for soil organisms, and recycle nutrients and organic wastes. And the soil also acts as a filter, blocking particulate matter, allowing filtered fresh water to return to the water table. So there's many things that we see on Earth that make life possible. From the atmosphere, of course, can see that living things are able to survive because of the properties of Earth. And there's no other planet we've seen that has the same properties that we see on planet Earth. All right. Let's go to the next one here. Let's look at water for a moment. Water is just an amazing chemical. And when you look at the properties of water, we realize that life would not be possible if it were not for this amazing molecule. And in a sense, it's kind of like a trinity. It's got the two hydrogens and an oxygen. Maybe in a sense, it's maybe the molecule of God or something. I don't know. I don't want to have a theology about it, but it's an amazing molecule. And when you look at the properties of water, we find that ice, which is solid water, is less dense. So ice floats. Which is amazing when you think of it, because it doesn't matter how cold it gets outside. You always have the ice out on the lakes, and the densest temperature of water is actually 4 degrees Celsius. So the most dense temperature of water always falls to the bottom. So fish are always able to survive. And at the top you've got the ice, which is 0 and below, and so it always floats. Amazing properties. We don't have it. And they're a chemical that has the same properties of water. It's got a very high melting and boiling point compared to other similar molecules. It's called the universal solvent because it's capable of dissolving so many substances. But it also has a high specific heat capacity, allowing places around the water to be warmer in winter and cooler in summer. So it retains the heat. It takes a long time for it to heat up. But once it does, it keeps that heat for a long time. Then that's the specific heat capacity of water. But water also has capillary action, and it's owing to the hydrogen bonding between two adjacent water molecules. And what that does is it allows the capillary action of the water to go from the roots of the trees all the way to the top of the trees through transpiration. They're connected to each other. I actually was cleaning up a spill on my floor as I was working on my dishwasher on Saturday, and I love this property of water. As I was vacuuming up some water with the vacuum, I could see it drawing out all the other water molecules around to clean it up. So that is due to the hydrogen bonding between water molecules that are close to each other, and that's amazing. So water isn't life, but without liquid water, there would be no life. As all living things really are the cells are bathed in water as the medium of life. So really I think this to me speaks of the design, the incredible design of the earth, allowing water in 3 states. And that's amazing with water. There's naturally occurring 3 states of water on the earth. Okay, the sea. Let's look at the sea and how the seas give evidence for God. And I kind of was saying that I'm going to start from big and then get smaller and smaller over time. What does the sea tell us that gives evidence for there being a God? Well, we know that oceans cover more than 70% of Earth's surface. And kind of an interesting fact is most of the Earth's surface is actually in darkness. When you think of it, because most of the Earth is covered by water, but very deep water. So when you get to the very abysmal depths, it's very dark down there. There's no light. So much of the Earth's surface is actually in complete darkness. The majority of life on Earth, about 94%, is aquatic. And over 70% of our planet's oxygen is produced by the ocean. It's produced by the photosynthetic algae in the ocean. They produce 70%, which we don't think about a lot often time. It makes for 97% of the Earth's water supply. It's the ocean. And 3 billion people rely on fish as a main source of protein from the oceans. But unfortunately, by 2050, if things don't change, due to humans, the plastic in the ocean will outweigh the fish. So sadly, we have not taken care of our oceans as we should have. All right.
Now let's look at the next.
Slide here. The next one is the springs of water. How do these give evidence for God?
Well, when you look at
the springs of water, this is essentially the water table. So anywhere you go on Earth's surface, you dig down, you will get to the water table. Even in desert places where you think that there's just absolutely no water, amazingly, things survive there if they can tap down into the groundwater level, and it literally covers the planet. So how does this show us that there's a God? Well, let's explain this here. The water table is formed when rainwater and water from other bodies of water on the surface of the earth seeps down into the soil and is stored as groundwater. This passing down of water through the soil is known as infiltration. However, of all the usable fresh water in the world, approximately 97% of it is groundwater. So most of the usable fresh water that we have on the earth is groundwater. So groundwater may be near the Earth's surface or as deep as 30,000 feet. That's the deepest that they've have reported groundwater. And the depth of the water table can change depending on the time of year. So during late winter and spring, snow starts to melt, and spring rainfall is plentiful. Water on the surface infiltrates into the ground, and the water table rises. And then, of course, later on in the summer, as water is used up, the water table gets lower. But in drier parts of the world where drinking surface water is not available, people have survived on groundwater by making wells for thousands of years. So we know this. The archaeology. When we look at the archaeology of the Bible or even of history, often it is centered around water. You have to have a water source for the people to live in a certain area. So they have to dig a well or be close enough to a freshwater source. But the water table ensures that wherever you go in the world, you can have access to drinkable water if you have the tools to dig down to access that water. Okay. So that to me, when I see the water table, I see the signs of God's caring for human beings through giving us the water table. Now let's look at something else. We're going to look at symbiotic relationships in nature. How does this show God? Well, when we see different organisms working together to survive. For instance, you see here a bee getting pollen on the legs because they're going for the nectar, which is on the flower. So the bee helps the plant pollinate other plants, and it in turn gets a delicious meal from the plant. Or a rhinoceros with the oxpecker bird, which pecks and eats the organisms that live on its back. Or you have the goby fish, and you have the bulldozer shrimp working together. So one protects the other, and the shrimp gives the goby a place to live. And then the goby in turn gets the shrimp in turn gets a bodyguard of the fish. Or you have the sloth, which has algae on its back. So the algae has a place to live on the sloth. The sloth moves so slowly, but in turn the sloth gets camouflaged in the rainforest. Very interesting. Other thing you have in the corner there is the Colombian lesser black tarantula provides a bodyguard for the small dotted humming frog. And the frog eats the ants, which often feast on the tarantula's eggs. So you have a tarantula with a pet frog. So it's really amazing. You see all these symbiotic relationships. This is another one. The mycorrhiza fungus, often it's living in the soil where the roots of the trees and it actually has finer nodules to be able to draw up the water and nutrients in the soil than even the plant does, and it gives that nutrients to the plant. Or you have the sea anemone and the clownfish. So you see the clownfish gets a home, and the sea anemone is also protected because the clownfish emits a high-pitched sound which deters other fish that prey on the sea anemone. So we see the symbiotic relationships where organisms, if there was a God that created these organisms, it's really interesting how they do work together with each other to allow life to survive. You see them almost altruistically giving, but then you do see this give and take in relationship in nature, and there's many examples of it. Yes.
Yeah. I was going to ask, how do you see things like, there's a lot of non-symbiotic relationships?
Yes.
Viruses, like let's say plague bacillus killing people to reproduce. And then, like insects laying their eggs inside of other animals, and then they hatch and they eat the insides of that organism to feed their children. And then of course, it hurts, I'm sure. And then the animal, of course, dies and the eggs hatch.
Yes.
How would you see that sort of thing?
So the question was, I'm just going to repeat for the recording here. How would you see a relationship where it's a parasitic relationship where one animal benefits at the expense of another animal? Let's say a fungus that is in, let's say I think it's cordyceps fungus that lives on an ant and basically takes over the ant from the inside. How does that show God? And that is a good question. I think maybe in the same way, I think that part of what we see in creation, some of it is a result of what I would consider the fall. So it's not as nature was originally intended. And I would say that is probably true about diseases and things like, and you mentioned the plague. You've got lots of diseases that we have now that I don't think was part of the original creation in terms of my theological belief. So I would say there are some that would be maybe part of this of the broken creation. In a sense, I think of it like this. You've got a beautiful Ferrari. This red Ferrari, and then you drive it out and you crash it. And someone might say, well, why would a Ferrari maker make this crashed Ferrari? And the Ferrari maker would be like, I didn't make that. I made a beautiful Ferrari. It got crashed. So in a sense, we live in a crashed world where it was not exactly as nature intended. So I do think those like viruses and some of these diseases are very insidious in nature, and I would explain it maybe that in those terms, like as sort of like a broken creation. Okay. Next one. So we can see some of these relationships. I went over that. Some of these different relationships between organisms. Some mutualism. But maybe let's get on to the other ones here. And actually, the Lord Jesus mentioned this here. Jesus said two things. He said, "Consider the lilies, how they grow. They don't toil or spin. But I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not clothed like one of these." So when we look at the plant life, Jesus actually turned our attention to the plants. Look at the plants. And then Jesus also said, "Look at the ravens. They don't plant or harvest or store food in barns, for God feeds them. And you are far more valuable to him than any birds." So Jesus often pointed our attention to nature. And when we think of this, how are ravens fed by God? And I think the answer is the food web. So the food web that we have out there, and it does involve death. Ravens have to eat different dead things, as we know. Ravens often fly on roadkills. They do eat dead things, but in a sense, that's how God provides for them. Think of you and I. We go to the food store. We eat meats that are process and packaged for us. But in a sense, that's God's provision. Something did have to die to give that. And in a sense, it's okay. It's part of the, I think, the natural cycle that's okay, and it is allowed. Now, some people are, like my son is a vegetarian. He'd prefer not to kill any animal, and I respect him for that. But I do think that that's another way that God provides for organisms on earth. And I also look at how are lilies clothed by God? When Jesus mentions the lilies, how are they clothed by God? I believe it's photosynthesis. I believe photosynthesis is the process by which God clothes the plants, the living things that are the basis of the food web. And so all that I see as a provision of God. And the amazing thing, of course, you see the carbon cycle. The release of carbon dioxide in the air through respiration. Either could be us or even a decomposer, and it's taken in by the photosynthetic plants that use it to make their tissues, and then it's in turn eaten. So really amazing. I see that design of God. Now we're gonna go really. Actually, I'm gonna say one thing before I mention this. We can when we kind of see the design of organisms. You see, this is a lung tissue, and you kind of see the X-ray of the lung, and you kind of see how the branching is occurring there. Now compare it now to a tree. You can kind of see that common design. That's there. You see this common design. When I look at this, someone could look at this and say, "Let's chance," or it's the best way to extract oxygen from in a lung, or to extract the carbon dioxide from the air, from the gas. But I see it a little bit differently. I would look at this and see the same thing, and I'd say, look at the common designer. This looks to me like design that's been made. I look at this and say, what a designer. And if you look at the human body even as well, we see the way that our lungs are, and surface area, and how there's a really good ratio of the surface area to volume. And you see how everything's so packaged, amazing. Now we're gonna look at DNA for a moment, and we're started from the really big, and we're working down to the small. The DNA. Do you know that DNA is made up of only 4 letters called nucleotides, and 3 of them in a row are called a codon. Codons code for amino acids and start-stop. So DNA is packaged in chromosomes like books, and the entire genome is like a set of encyclopedias for each and every organism that has ever lived on Earth. So literally trillions of creatures have been made with their own set of encyclopedia-like DNA called a genome. Now this model I have for you here of DNA. If this was the size of a human strand of DNA, a genome, and it was this size, it would go around the Earth 1.64 times. Think of that. Consider that. If this was the size of your DNA, around the Earth 1.64 times. So realize you have a lot of information, useful, good information, not gibberish, is stored in the DNA, in these nucleotides. And what I like to think of it is like this. When I, as an analogy, I like to look at written text and compare it with DNA, which is the biological basis for all living creatures. So let's just look at this for a moment. I'm gonna make an analogy between books and DNA. Okay, so DNA is the genetic code. Gives instructions for the appearance of every living organism. It's a blueprint for every living thing that has ever existed. But does it have an author, or is it randomly formed? Really, there are 2 options. So some might say it's randomly formed, spontaneously generated over a long time, or it was designed. There's really only two alternatives. Bill Gates said this: DNA is like a computer program, but far more advanced than any software ever created. So he knows that DNA is incredibly complex. And I'm going to show you guys. You guys are going to see a video of how it actually works it's an animation, but what it looks like, it's incredible. So let's look at this analogy for a moment. We're looking at a human scale on the left. On the right side, we're looking at God's scale. Now, of course, God is huge. You can do everything on big scale, but he's also involved in the microscopic scale.
And we
know now that a cell is extremely complex, and even during the time of, let's say, Charles Darwin, when some of those theories were postulated, there was not a good understanding of what was inside the cell. Just looked like a sack of jelly and chemicals and random things. Now, when we go into it, we use microscopy. We can realize that very complex things are happening inside the cell. So let's compare the human mind with the mind of God for a moment. Now, DNA nucleotides would be compared to, would be analogous to the strokes of a pen. So let's say you're doing the letter A. You do downstroke, other stroke, and cross. So that's 3 strokes of a pen. In the same way, you need 3 nucleotides to make a codon. A codon would be analogous to a letter. So you have a letter, a codon. Now, every letter that we have codes for a different amino acid. So right now, there are 20 different amino acids that we need. 20 different amino acids in existence, and there is a start and a stop codon. So to make all of life, we need to have amino acids to make proteins, which amino acids are the basis of the macromolecule, which are proteins. So basically, you need 22 codes. And it just so happens that it's very interestingly Hebrew, the Hebrew language also has 22 letters. It's kind of interesting that there's 22 needed, 22 are there. So here are the 22 Hebrew letters. And here are the 20 amino acids and the start and stop codon, which is needed. Okay. So it's interesting. Some people have made a connection with the Hebrew letters and the different amino acids. So I'm not sure. I haven't researched this very much to know the connection, but it's very interesting that if God, the God of the Bible, is the creator, it's interesting that there are also a corresponding number of amino acids and start and stop. Now, amino acids are the building blocks of life, as I was saying. So you have to link amino acids together to make proteins and enzymes and macromolecules. There are other ones needed, like carbohydrates and lipids, but amino acids are essential to life. So let's say the words are read by the eyes. So the eyes read 2 words together, black cat. Okay. On the microscopic level, DNA is read by RNA polymerase. So RNA polymerase reads the DNA just as eyes read the text on a piece of paper. Then the words are interpreted by the brain. So as you read black cat, you make an image of a black cat in your mind. In the same way, DNA is interpreted by ribosomes. So ribosomes interpret the mRNA transcript that comes from the DNA. So on a very microscopic level, you've got ribosomes interpreting the messenger RNA that came from the original DNA. Then I made a paragraph. The black cat ran down the street, caught a mouse, then returned home carrying its treasure. In the same way, when you string those words together, you make a polypeptide. And then, just like chapters in a book, so you put paragraphs together, you make chapters. You also, on DNA, you make a functional polypeptide. So you can make an enzyme or a protein. And those are all coded by those codons when strung together. Then you've got book subsections, parts of a chapter. And in the same way, you've got genes. So genes are like book subsections that code for a certain trait that all organisms have. All organisms have genes. They're coding parts of DNA that codes for a certain characteristic. Then you have a single book. And I just happen to choose a Jewish encyclopedia because of the number of letters that they have. And that's analogous to a chromosome. Chromosome would be like a single book. Then a whole set of encyclopedias altogether from A to Z or Aleph in the case of Hebrew, all the way to Tav would be analogous to a complete genome. Okay, we have 46 chromosomes, 23 from mom, 23 from dad, but altogether, that's our complete genome, like a set of encyclopedias. Now this is kind of interesting. This is the chromosome count for different selected animals. So you've got the dog, 78 chromosomes. Wolf, 78. You've got the horse, 64. Human is 46. But then you see gorilla is 48 chromosomes. But a rabbit is near us at 44 chromosomes. So these are all the different, basically the different number of volumes in their encyclopedia. Of these different mammals and also birds as well. So you can see how there are these unique, and notice as well that they're all even numbers. And that's important because to procreate, you have to do meiosis. To meiosis, you go down to your haploid number, and you join again to make an even number. It's really cool how you find this order in nature of even chromosome number.
Dogs have twice as many.
Yes. That's right. Next one. Now, when you think of a book, you can photocopy originals. You can make a copy with a book. But the amazing thing about DNA, it can self-replicate with an error factor of 1 in 10 billion. That is amazing. So think of this. If our cells of our body, we've got 3 billion nucleotides. This means that DNA can replicate itself completely 3 times at least before making a single error. That is amazing. Amazing precision. And this fact comes from the article that I have there as well. That's a reputed source. So incredible. Now I want you to show you how it's like when you look at DNA being replicated. Watch how amazing it is.
Excuse interruption. Can Sylvester Rusinova please come to guidance? Sylvester Rusinova, come to guidance.
Now this is showing what DNA looks like so it says here each of your cells has 1.8 meters of DNA. So it's really amazing to think of how long DNA each cell has. And we're going to see as it folds up into what we call a chromosome. So it's getting all folded up and packaged.
Do you see the creation process as complete or ongoing?
I think ongoing, I would say. The question was, do I see the creation process as complete or ongoing? And I would say ongoing as as I do believe creatures are adapted to their environment, but I see that as a loving creator adapting creation to the environment around us. And you see the chromosomes there, and now you see them during mitosis. I think that's called metaphase, and then they split apart. And now one becomes two.
That's actually amazing.
Yeah. Okay.
Are these many photos by an electron microscope?
I think the last photos were actually from electron microscope, but I think the original one was an animation, just done by, but very, you can see how the complexity of just even DNA is just really unfathomably complex. So conclusion. So for me, as I look at the evidence, there must be a God who has made DNA, the self-replicating system that codes for all the traits of all organisms who have ever lived on Earth. And science estimate that there are currently 8.7 million different species of organisms, each with their own unique genome. So each organism has its own encyclopedia, set of encyclopedias. And far greater than Encyclopedia Britannica. Like we think of Encyclopedia Britannica, and like nothing compared to the size of the human or any other creature's genome. So since language cannot exist without a mind to make language that codes for meaning, then there must be a language maker and there must be a God. So my rationale is that just as words on a page correspond to an actual thing, ideas or things, so DNA corresponds to living things. And to make that blueprint, you have to have a mind that makes the original blueprint that codes for the actual thing. So I think that is DNA is actually very strong evidence for the authorship of life. That the idea that life has an author, not just we're just a collection of random molecules, but there's actually authorship. And I want you to think of this. I'm just ending the presentation here. You think of Will and Jada Smith's mansion. So let's say for a moment we were able to go to their mansion. We were able to spend a week at their mansion, and for free. And let's say Will and Jada Smith, they actually built the mansion themselves. They made it beautiful. We went to their house in Calabasas, California. We ate the finest things from their pantry. They have a live-in chef, and we ate the food that they provided for us. We swam in their huge swimming pool. We played tennis in their tennis courts. We soaked in their jacuzzi. We watched a great movie in their movie theater. And at the end of the day, we fell asleep in their guest room, in the finest room, in the finest bed we've ever had. We've had the best sleep ever. After a week, in the morning, we get up. We're eating breakfast prepared by their chefs. And someone says, would you write a thank you card to the owners and builders of this house? And you say, you know what? I don't even think they exist. So I will not write a thank you card because I just don't think they exist. The question is, I want to ask you, what do you think about that person? Would you think?
Will's gonna slap him.
Yeah. Will Smith's gonna slap him. He's coming. And here's the thing. I don't want to be. I don't want to be insulting, but I do think that we need to maybe look at this from a perspective of we've been given so much around us. We're surrounded, almost like a fish saying, "Where's water? I cannot see water." It's literally swimming in water, and yet it doesn't perceive it. And it's saying, I don't know if water exists. And we're like, you're in it. In a sense, I believe that we're surrounded. One of the Bible texts says, in him we live and move and have our being. We literally live and move and have our being in God. And yet sometimes we question, does he even really exist? And that's what I would say. looking at all of the evidence out there, we all see the same evidence. We all see the same facts. But I would interpret it, I don't have as much faith to say it all came by random chance. I have to say, I have enough faith just to say I believe that there is a creator that made us. So yeah. So I think that's it. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.